The night of July 24th, 2025, began like any other in the small, forgotten town of Havenwood. It was a place where time seemed to slow down, where the loudest sound was often the gentle chirping of crickets. The sky above was a deep velvet black, a perfect canvas for the cosmos. Stars glittered like scattered diamonds, a familiar and comforting sight for the few souls still awake. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens, a faint, ethereal river of light. It was a scene of profound peace, a testament to the vast, silent universe that watched over us all. This quiet harmony was a promise that the world for one more night was exactly as it should be. But some promises are destined to be broken. It started subtly. A single point of light, no brighter than the planet Venus, appeared near the constellation of Orion. But this was no planet. It pulsed with a soft azure glow, a color unseen in the natural night sky. At first it was just a curiosity, a strange star for the local amateur astronomers to ponder. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, it began to grow. The light intensified, casting a faint blue hue upon the sleeping world below. This was not a star, nor a satellite. It was something else entirely, something new and unknown, and it was getting closer. The orb expanded, its light spilling across the landscape. The blue luminescence painted the rooftops and treetops in an otherworldly glow. Then something else began to happen in the atmosphere around it. Thin, crackling tendrils of white electricity, like silent lightning, began to snake through the clouds. They did not strike the ground, but instead danced around the growing sphere, feeding into it. The air grew heavy, thick with a strange static charge that made the hairs on your arms stand on end. The silent, peaceful night was being rewritten by an unseen and powerful hand. The universe was no longer just watching, it was visiting. Down below, windows began to light up one by one. People emerged from their homes, drawn by the unnatural light. They stood in their yards and on their porches, their faces turned upward. A collective gasp rippled through the quiet streets of Havenwood. They were farmers, teachers, and mechanics, people who understood the predictable rhythms of the earth and sky. What they saw defied all logic. It was beautiful, yet terrifying. Fear and awe mingled in their hearts, a potent cocktail of human emotion when faced with the truly unknown. The familiar constellations were being blotted out by this silent, majestic, and deeply unsettling visitor. The initial wonder quickly gave way to a creeping sense of dread as the world began to act strangely. Inside their homes, people tried to find answers. They turned on their radios, hoping for a news bulletin, an explanation from the outside world. But all they heard was static. The familiar voices of announcers were replaced by a rhythmic, distorted hum that seemed to pulse in time with the light in the sky. It was as if the orb was not just a visual phenomenon, it was actively jamming their connection to everything they knew. They were isolated, trapped in a bubble of blue light and unnerving silence. A few of the town's more tech-savvy residents launched their personal drones. They hoped to get a closer look, to capture footage of the anomaly that hung over their homes. The small machines ascended bravely, their rotors whirring against the strange quiet. But as they approached the blue sphere, their lights flickered erratically. Their controls became unresponsive. One by one they faltered and tumbled from the sky, crashing back to Earth like metal birds with broken wings. Whatever this thing was, it possessed a power that rendered our own technology useless, a silent rejection of our attempts to understand it. The light from the orb was now so bright, it bathed the entire valley in a perpetual dreamlike twilight. It did not generate heat, only this cold, penetrating blue light. Shadows grew long and sharp, pointing away from the celestial mystery. The electrical surges in the sky became more frequent, more intense. The very air felt charged, vibrating with an energy that was both exhilarating and deeply frightening. The people of Havenwood could only watch, powerless. They were witnesses to an event that was beyond their control, beyond their comprehension, and their sense of safety had completely vanished. The silence from the orb was perhaps this most terrifying part. There was no engine roar, no sonic boom, no sign of conventional propulsion. It simply hung there, a massive silent judge in the sky. It defied the laws of physics as we understood them. Its arrival was not an invasion in the traditional sense, with noise and fire. It was something far more insidious. It was a quiet, suffocating presence that dismantled their reality piece by piece. The world of predictable sunrises and starry nights was gone, replaced by a single overwhelming question mark that glowed blue. For most of my life, I have studied the cosmos, searching for answers in the distant light of galaxies. I have asked the big questions about our place in the universe. Are we alone? What lies beyond the veil of our perception? But I never imagined the answer would arrive like this. As I stood watching the events unfold on a dozen classified monitors, I knew this was not a random cosmic event. This was the culmination of decades of secret work, of whispered theories, and of a project so clandestine that only a handful of people on the planet knew its name. A project designed for this exact moment. We called it Blue Veil. It wasn't a weapon or a defense system, it was a hypothesis. A desperate gamble based on fragmented data and theoretical physics. The theory was simple, yet profound. Our reality is not the only one. There are other universes, other dimensions, layered just beyond our own, separated by a thin membrane of space-time. Blue Veil was the name we gave to the predicted moment when that membrane would weaken, when something from the other side could finally push its way through. We never knew if it would be a gentle knock or a violent breach. The project was born from anomalies we had been tracking for years. Strange energy signatures from the deepest voids of space, mathematical patterns that defied explanation, and faint rhythmic signals that were too structured to be natural. We built our most sensitive instruments to listen, to watch for the signs. We believed something was coming, we just didn't know what or when. We were like scientists watching a storm form over a distant ocean, knowing it would one day make landfall. Tonight in Havenwood, the storm had arrived, and it was far grander and more terrifying than we had ever dared to imagine. As the orb saturated the sky, I realized our hypothesis was both right and tragically incomplete. We had predicted a contact event, a veil thinning. We had not predicted the sheer scale of the energy, the control it exerted over our world, or the intelligence that seemed to be guiding it. Blue Veil was no longer a theory on a whiteboard. It was a living, breathing reality unfolding above an unsuspecting town. We had given a name to the phenomenon, but we had no more understanding of what was truly happening than the frightened people staring up at the sky. We were all children in the dark. The spectacle was about to enter its final, most awe-inspiring act. The solid blue light of the orb began to shift. The perfect sphere started to ripple, like the surface of a pond disturbed by an unseen hand. The light swirled and coalesced toward the center, growing brighter and more intense. The energy crackles in the sky ceased, as if all the power was now being focused on a single point. A deep, resonant hum, so low it was felt more than heard, vibrated through the ground, through the buildings, and through the very bones of everyone watching. Something was changing. Something was about to be born. Then a tear appeared in the fabric of the light. It started as a dark line, a sliver of absolute blackness against the brilliant blue. Slowly it widened, stretching into a circular abyss. It was not a hole into the starry night sky behind it. It was a portal to somewhere else entirely, a darkness so profound it seemed to drink the light around it. This was the doorway. The veil had not just thinned, it had been torn open. A gateway now stood open between our world and another, a place whose nature we could not even begin to fathom. The awe that had filled the crowd was now consumed by a primal, heart-stopping dread. Within that dark, circular portal, there was movement. It was subtle at first, a slow, titanic shift that was difficult to process. It was not a ship, not a machine as we would build one. It was a shape, a silhouette of impossible size, defined only by the stars it blotted out from the dimension behind it. The scale was staggering, dwarfing the mountains on the horizon. The fragment of it that was visible through the portal suggested a being or an object so colossal that our minds struggled to accept its existence. The secret we had codenamed Blue Veil was not just a visitor, it was a titan. The portal continued to expand, its dark edges pulling back to reveal more of the impossible shape within. The low hum intensified, becoming a foundational bass note for a new reality. The people of Havenwood stood frozen, their faces a mixture of terror and sublime wonder. They were witnessing the arrival of something that would forever change humanity's understanding of the universe. The night of peace was a distant memory. The age of questions was over. Tonight, on July 24th, 2025, an answer had arrived. And as the great shadow began to emerge from the doorway, we could only stare and wonder if we were ready for it.